Welcome to the Living Unoffended podcast with your host, Brant Hansen.
This is so good. Rob sent me this. Rob Randolph is a friend of the show. He's been to our followership conference, he said, and he emailed. He's like, I think you'll be interested in this, and I certainly am. It's from a podcast, and the podcast is called Neurofaith. Neurofaith, all one word, with Kurt Thompson. He's a doctor, and they did one called Exploring Forgiveness, A Journey to Transformation with Dr. Robert Enright. This has been a couple years ago, but if you are interested in the subject at all, which I presume you are because you're here, you may want to look that up. Again, it's on the Neurofaith podcast, and if you search for Exploring Forgiveness, A Journey to Transformation, you'll find it. Dr. Robert Enright is a guy who's a professor at Wisconsin, I believe they said, and he's been studying forgiveness for years, and when he first started studying it, nobody was studying it. It's just, he got a lot of pushback for even studying it. Like, you can't do that. And that's a fascinating part of the interview, but I want to read you a little bit for you, a touch of the transcript, a few minutes of this, because this is where he talks about the effects of forgiveness. So when he unpacks what forgiveness is, it won't be anything new to you if you've been listening to this show for very long, or you've read Unoffendable or Living Unoffended. It has to do with giving up your right to resentment and to anger, and then in turn, willing the best for someone else. So that's the turn that we have to make if we're going to actually forgive people. And he's got a lot of fascinating things to say about it. I'm sure I'll reference it again. I'll probably order his books too, but Dr. Robert Enright here. So here's what he says. Let me just share with you some studies we've done. Suzanne Friedman, who is a professor at the University of Northern Iowa, and I worked with survivors of I'll inject here, of a certain kind of abuse. That's really bad. 12 female adult survivors, which is one of the most horrendous injustices on the planet because a father or father figure who's supposed to protect violates. It's much worse than being held up at gunpoint by a masked marauder at Central Park because the father is supposed to protect. And all of them were very kind at first. They said, I think I'm going to ruin your study, Suzanne, because I'm going to be the one who won't forgive. There's no way I'm going to forgive. Do you really want me in the study? And in her kindness, Suzanne said yes. So she randomly assigned 6 to forgiveness and 6 to the control group, and they were free to seek therapy as they wished. And she worked one-on-one with the process model we just went through about forgiveness, an hour a week for each one of the 6 until each one of them said, I think I've forgiven. It took about 54 weeks. About a year before each one of them said, I have forgiven. We assessed them and their anxiety went down. And they went from clinical depression to non-depressed status. They didn't just improve in depression, they went to non-depressed status. Then the control people were doing not forgiveness. They were doing interventions as they saw fit through mental health counseling. They were still clinically depressed. Suzanne then worked with them one-on-one an hour a week for about a year. They went from clinically depressed status to non-depressed. Then that year, when the original group no longer had forgiveness therapy, they were still non-depressed. And you know what else they recaptured? Their sense of self-esteem. They became more whole as they realized they can stand in the pain. They can offer goodness to someone else. By the way, I'll inject here for a second. I have never really thought about that. Like the downstream effects on self-esteem from us being able to say, this does not control me anymore. And I'm strong enough to offer goodness instead of rehearsing the awful stuff I've been through. I had not thought about that. Anyway, continuing, Dr. Robert Enright said, what does that mean about who I am as a person? Instead of being broken, they were made more whole. Another example, we've worked with men on a cardiac unit of a hospital, and research shows that when you have cardiac compromise and you get really angry, the arteries to the heart begin to narrow. And we screen these men for having deep injustices against them. And when we hooked them up to the heart monitors and had them retell their stories, yes, indeed, their arteries started to narrow. So we had a program for forgiveness therapy with half of the men. The other half had cardiac health as usual. And after a 4-month lag, after we finished the program, This is the follow-up test when we hooked him up to the heart monitors again and said, retell your story of deep hurt. The arteries of those in the control group who had regular heart health in the hospital continued to narrow. Those who had the forgiveness program, their arteries stayed significantly more open. Dr. Douglas Russell, who oversaw the program, said we helped these men avoid sudden death and chest pain. It's the first study on the planet to ever show a cause and effect relationship, cause and effect between learning to forgive and the improvement of a major organ of the body. We've worked with people in drug rehab who are using drugs a lot to mask their own pain. Their depression went down to normal levels, and their fear of going back into drug use went way down. We worked in hospice situations, very short term, because they were dying. This is so fascinating. They were women in their 80s, and even though we only had 4 weeks with them rather than a year, they had to wrap things up. They too became healthier emotionally as their physical indicators were going down, including hope for the future. Why would their hope for the future on this earth be going up? Because a lot of them drew their family to their bedside and reconciled before they then passed from this earth, and they knew they were leaving their family in a better position. We have many more studies than this, but these are typical. Again, that's part of the transcript. If I knew how to do it and all that, I would have just played you the audio. But that's from Neurofaith with Kurt Thompson, who I need to listen to more of this podcast that he does. So good. Exploring Forgiveness, A Journey to Transformation with Dr. Robert Enright. A lot of great stuff in that. I'll be revisiting at some point. I'm going to order the book, so I'll share some of the insights that he has. Oh, one of the things he hit on, which I loved, is he talked about the 70 times 7 thing, about Jesus saying we need to forgive that many times, and how that's obviously saying this is a lifestyle. This is a posture that we have towards the world. It's not a one-off thing here and another one-off thing there. It's a way of living. And he talked about how it's forgiving. Like forgiving is for giving. It's to allow us to give to those who have hurt us. This thing that God has done for us. And he likened forgiveness to like going to a gym, like the forgiveness gym. And at first it's really overwhelming maybe to start to forgive people. Like when you go in a gym and you see all the machines and lights and people and stuff, and you're like, what is this? It's so confusing. But you start to get used to it, and it starts to become a lifestyle, and you get stronger. And it's true. I want to share another listener email in just a moment. I want to remind you of our podcast sponsor. We're so thankful for United Faith Mortgage. And if you are thinking about buying a house, talk to them because they are awesome. Brian is the guy. When you call, they treat you like family. It is a small family thing, but they are amazing with their resources. They're direct lenders, and that's a rare thing. It's not something everybody is in the mortgage business. So they have a little more flexibility, a lot more actually, and they may be able to get you a better rate too. So they're wonderful. They support cure and healing in the name of Jesus through cure, and they support us here. So we're thankful for that. And I've used them for my last mortgage, and they were just fantastic. So UnitedFaithMortgage.com. This is a note from, well, no, I'm not going to say her name. She asked me not to share her name, but I can share the story. She said, hey, Brant, I'm a huge fan of the Oddcast and now the Living Unoffended podcast. I found them after reading and being deeply challenged and subsequently changed by your book, Unoffendable. I've been a deeply committed follower of Jesus for years, but only started putting Jesus' call to pray for my enemies into practice regularly. Recently, I'm part of a ministry God had called a group of us to start in a small, rural, isolated community in Nebraska. Many broken people there, the result of generations of addictions and abuse. I had been praying for a number of the most broken ones for a while, but in the last year, one of them, who we help from time to time, started stealing from our ministry. Cans of gas, money box, tools, credit card from a visiting friend, etc. Each time it's happened, I've been challenged, and I do mean challenged, to pray for her. Why do I fight against what I know is the way of Jesus, the best way? God has revealed and has been purging huge amounts of self-righteousness in me each time I've been bumped, quote unquote, by her thievery. But I've persisted in praying for her, sometimes with gritted teeth at the start, because listening to your podcast each week reminds me to and calls me higher. When I heard yesterday she'd done it again, it was the first time I began praying for her immediately. The self-righteous anger didn't even have time to rise up in me. I had to pray a lot that day to keep the angry thoughts away, but finally was honestly able to think about her without having to go to war against my thoughts that wanted to rise up. Thank you for being consistent and persistent in driving this home. It is life-changing for her as well as me. It's a challenge Jesus puts before us. Please keep it going. We can never hear it enough. And absolutely, yes, I ordered your book, Living Unoffended. That's very kind. So I wanted to share that because it gets easier. I keep saying that. And I love these stories because it's proof again. This becomes a grace that God gives us, and we grow in grace. We grow in the ability to extend grace, but God gives us the grace, like Dallas Willard said, to burn like a jet fuel on, like a 747 burns fuel on takeoff. Like he gives it to us to use it and extend it to people. But we get better at it. It just becomes a way of life, and it's so much healthier. Listen to just all the different examples from Dr. Enright. It's just a better way to live. As I always say, class, we can say it together. Jesus is a genius. He made us. He knows how to live.
You've been listening to the Living Unoffended podcast with Brant Hansen. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And if you'd like more information on Brant Hansen, his book Unoffendable, and more, go to branthansen.com.